Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar tonight on optimizing for IVF success. We will be joined by Isabelle, our fertility nutritionist, and we will answer as many questions as we can as we go through the presentation. So we tend to try and answer them to keep them relevant to the topic we're talking about, but we are making a note of everything, so we will answer questions at the end as well. So feel free to ask as you go through, or make a note and then ask us at our question and answer session at the end. Hi Isabelle, how are you?
Hi, Sophie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can do.
Yeah, good. I'm very well. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
very autumnal now. It's September, so a bit of a shocker, but never
I
mind.
know, wearing socks and all the things that you're not used to wearing.
Exactly. Um, but yes, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Isabelle. We will head through to the presentation now. And yes, as mentioned, we will answer any questions that we don't get while we're going through at the very end. So just a little bit about you, Isabelle, who you are.
Hello, so I'm Isabelle. I'm a nutritionist and I've been specialising in fertility for the last 20 years or so. So working alongside Zita and with IVF, working with IVF. And I focus on both male and female because I think it's extremely important. Obviously, the man, it's 50-50. So the man doesn't get to get away with this. And I work obviously, supporting couples going through IVF as well as natural conception. But obviously tonight we're talking about IVF, and making it doable, basically just giving some help and support and ideas and stuff of how you can optimize your fertility via IVF, which you can do quite a lot for, by the way.
Brilliant, thank you. So firstly, we'll just look at the foundations of fertility nutrition generally. So what is a fertility diet?
Well, obviously, if there was a specific diet that people had to follow in order to have a baby, the human race would have died out many years ago. So, and I do think it's important to know that because there's so much stress around all of this, and including the dietary aspect, because there's so much information out there and people get confused about what's right, what's wrong. There isn't necessarily a right, there is a wrong, of course, but essentially that the diet that actually has been found out to be, one of the best diets to support fertility is a higher protein, lower carb, Mediterranean style diet. And obviously, so the Mediterranean diet is well known in the world for supporting healthy, longevity, reducing a cancer risk, lower risks of things like Alzheimer's and diabetes. It's an anti-inflammatory diet, and you can use the actual sort of ethics, if you like, of a Mediterranean diet with any cuisine in the world. And essentially, what we're looking at, it's a diet that is lower in processed foods, lower in saturated fats, lower in sugary foods, rich in whole grains, very colourful. And this is really the crux of it as well. Very rich in brightly coloured fruit and veg, good sources of good healthy sources of protein, both vegetarian and there is some meat and fish and animal produce, but obviously it's very easy to follow a healthy Mediterranean style diet if you're vegetarian. Um, and good quality fats. So a low fat diet is absolutely not recommended from a fertility perspective, because our hormones are made of fat essentially, and a lot of our essential nutrients are fat soluble. So in order to be able to absorb the important nutrients that we need, that we'll be talking about, that people know about, you need a certain amount of fat in your diet as well. So low fat is not the way to go, but good healthy fats.
Great, thank you. And so yes, protein, as you mentioned just
So
now.
protein, which is important. So protein provides the building blocks for growth. Anything that grows requires protein. So we require protein anyway. We also know, obviously, if we're going to the gym or whatever, we want to build muscle, we require protein. From an IVF perspective, or from a fertility perspective, actually, both male and female protein intake is important. So even if you're trying naturally, both of you can't live on toast and marmite. You do need to have protein in order to feed the eggs and the sperm and the hormones, etc. From an IVF perspective, for the female, the protein requirements go up considerably. So on a normal month, obviously you're going to ovulate with one egg. With IVF, the aim is to ovulate with several eggs, depending obviously on, follicle count, on egg reserve. But essentially, it can be, potentially anything from, a few eggs to 25 eggs. And the medication can only do so much. The medication will stimulate the ovaries to mature as many present follicles as possible in a safe environment to create the eggs. So that's the medication's job. That's the first challenge, is to actually respond to the medication. Whilst that is happening, you need to feed the eggs, and protein becomes very, very important. Um, so um, uh, Protein sources, well, obviously, if you're an omnivore, it's a little bit easier because some some lean meat, definitely fish. Not too much meat though. Actually, having said that, eggs is a fantastic fertility food, and in fact, we will be talking about the main sort of one of the most important things from eggs a bit later on. Good quality dairy. Again, dairy gets its sort of bad rap. If you are lactose intolerant, or if you're sensitive to dairy, it may be having a pro-inflammatory effect within the body. If you are not, it actually can be anti-inflammatory and in fact beneficial. So there isn't a sort of a no, dairy ban, and it's sort of dependent on you. It's also dependent on if you've got thyroid issues or endometriosis. I mean, there are certain conditions, if you like, that maybe would be better to have lower or no dairy, but certainly that they're good quality. But the other things obviously are beans, lentils, and chickpeas, nuts and seeds, really important. So protein is something that is really, really important. It also, in fact, we're going to talk I think the next slide is balancing our blood sugar levels, and one of the other reasons that protein is so important.
Thank you. And one thing we had been asked a lot about was about protein powders. Um,
Yes.
so we brought out our own. So if you maybe talk a little bit more about this one, please.
Sure. So I often recommend protein powders in the lead up and during an IVF, like during the stimulation. It's absolutely not mandatory by any stretch, but it can take the stress out of wondering if you're having enough protein. This is not an exact science. There isn't a specific amount of protein that we're meant to have, but essentially your ovaries are at the gym and they really need support. So it's quite hard to eat a lot of protein. You feel very full, etc. So collagen actually is a really great protein. Obviously, this is not suitable if you are vegetarian or vegan. Or potentially pescatarian, I have to say, depending on maybe the reasons behind your choices. We will talk about in a second. I can talk about other protein sources that are suitable for this type of diet. But if you are an omnivore, then collagen is actually a really nice way of getting protein in. Not only is it obviously it's good for connective tissue, for skin and hair and all that kind of thing. Which it's an easy protein source. It's tasteless, so you can put it into pretty much anything you like. It's great for gut health. It's anti-inflammatory. It's actually great in pregnancy for fetal development as well. So that is sort of reasonably in the fairly near past, this has sort of come into its own, really, collagen peptides powders. Another options, if you are a vegetarian and you are not dairy free, I often recommend a grass-fed, hormone-free whey protein, which tends to be very easy to tolerate, very easy to digest. And whey is actually a very good source of an antioxidant called glutathione, which is linked with better fertility. Actually, it's good for all sorts of things. From a vegan perspective, I would tend to recommend maybe pumpkin seed powder, which is great for zinc, and obviously that's often lacking in a vegan diet, or maybe rice powder, or potentially hemp seed powder, although rice is a little bit more concentrated. I tend not to recommend the general vegan protein powders are pea or soya based, both of which potentially may have contraceptive properties. And so although there isn't really any study done on this, it's very difficult to I can't give you any evidence, but if you're putting your bodies through an IVF, I think anything that maybe has a question mark is worth putting to the side just for a few weeks. So that's what I would tend to recommend.
Brilliant, thank you. And someone's just asked here, what's the best time to take protein powder for IVF?
Well, Realistically, obviously, the amount of protein that you're going to need over the day is dependent on your follicle count. Um, but this is, I mean, I would absolutely not recommend anybody going through IVF missing meals because um, ideally you might be looking at sort of 70 to 100 grams of protein a day for an IVF cycle. Um, and what you don't want to do is take it all at once because that's very difficult to digest. You feel terrible. It's completely imbalanced your day. So the answer, rather long-winded answer to say there isn't a specific time of the day, but depending on how much you're having, what else you're having, I would stagger it, you know. So something like this collagen, I mean, the great thing to do that's a really nice one to have at breakfast because you can have it in coffee, obviously decaf coffee, ladies, but and gentlemen, actually, ideally, you know, not too much caffeine, of course. We'll talk about that, but it's you know, it can pump up your protein at breakfast quite easily. But you can mix it into soup for lunch. We're coming into the talking about autumnal season. You know, we're going to be eating less salads, fewer salads soon. So things like soup and stuff, which often is a low protein meal, even if it's got lentils and things, you need to sort of bump it up. That's a really nice way of you know, stirring some collagen into that. So there isn't a particular time of day. Just be aware of maybe what other protein sources you're having and try and equal it out during the day. So you're not having a ton of protein, 60 grams of protein with one meal. I think that is much too much.
And when, if you're going through an IVF cycle, when should you start? Is it the same that we tend to say around 3 months ideally, or is it?
No, actually not with the protein. I mean, what I would say is yes, so ideally we're starting to so the maturation cycle, if you like, or of an egg and sperm is roughly 3 months, so between 2 and 4 months, if you like, 2.5 to 3 months. So we tend to say 3 months is a really nice amount of time to start preparing. To be absolutely honest, I often see people who are going into IVF sooner than that. So 2 months is, you know, it's never really too late. So preparing, and that is maybe tidying up the diet, reducing alcohol, reducing caffeine, you know, reducing sort of ultra processed foods and, you know, things that maybe aren't ideal, you know, increasing your antioxidant intake, that kind of thing. Then is the time to start, if you're not somebody who's used to eating much protein, being sort of more mindful of maybe including protein each time you eat, which we will talk about in a second about blood sugar and why that's important. If you're finding it very hard to have any protein at all, great, bring it in. But otherwise, I actually think that the protein powders, which is your sort of next stage up, I would start bringing in about a month before egg collection and then even ramping it up even further when you start stimulation. I mean, you don't really need the super amounts of protein until you start stimulating. But if you're suddenly doubling your protein intake overnight, your body's not going to thank you for it. It's too hard. You want to ease it in gently. So, and I don't think you need to be doing super amounts of protein because you shouldn't really be going at the gym it's, you know, super hard in those times. So all you're going to be doing is just not necessarily changing your lifestyle, but suddenly, oh, supercharging this protein in an unnecessary way. So not too early to have too much protein, I would say.
Brilliant, thank you. And you mentioned earlier about blood sugar balance and the importance.
Yeah, so blood sugar, basically, all our hormones working in connection with each other, stress hormones, sex hormones, thyroid hormones, they all work synergistically. And the more balanced the hormonal system, the more efficiently the body works. The more efficiently the body works, the better quality everything's going to be. And that is everything from mood to energy to sleep, but also to thyroid function, to the way you produce your eggs and sperm, to the quality of the eggs and the sperm, etc. And from a nutritional perspective, the starting point of this hormone balance is balancing your blood sugar levels. That's how you start to balance your hormones. And in order to balance your blood sugar levels, you eat on a regular basis. So, you know, one can actually do intermittent fasting, although I don't tend to recommend that in the lead up to IVF because, you know, your requirements are higher. But i.e., you don't have to get up at 7 o'clock and eat at 7:10. You can break your fast at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock if you want. But once you have broken your fast, if you like, then it is not then ideally you want to eat reasonably regularly, maybe every 4 hours or so. It's all dependent on your body, whether if you've got PCOS, you may need to eat a bit more regularly. We're all a little bit different, but you don't want to leave long gaps between eating in order to keep everything stable. And you want to include protein and fat actually every time you eat, because protein and fat reduces the speed at which sugar enters the bloodstream. Carbohydrates turn into sugar. So, and that obviously we have sugary stuff, but everything from rice to porridge to banana. So fruit is classed as a carbohydrate, but so fruit, bread and everything, just on its own will go into your bloodstream quite quickly. And we can't keep sugar in the bloodstream, so the pancreas will secrete insulin to take the sugar out of the bloodstream. You end up having peaks and troughs, which in turn, we feel it, because when we feel the troughs, we go, oh God, I need a bit of a pick me up. That's when your blood sugar's dropping. But also it's going to affect the way our hormones work, our energy, but also our sex hormones. So by including protein and colour, particularly at breakfast, but actually every meal, you keep everything more stable, you feel better, and your body works more efficiently from a hormonal perspective. So this is another, and this is almost actually nothing to do with fertility as well. Just in general life, you feel a lot better when you balance your blood sugar levels. And of course, then it will give you a reduced risk of diabetes per se, type 2 diabetes, but in pregnancy, actually gestational diabetes, and blood sugar levels are much more imbalanced in pregnancy, hence the risk of gestational diabetes, which is on the rise. So practicing before is a great way of going into a pregnancy as well.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. So now we will just look at what you can do to improve quality of eggs and sperm, which, like you said, there is a lot you can do through diet.
Absolutely. Well, of course. So we are, the old sort of cliche, we are what we eat is very true. We are what we eat. We are essentially, we're walking chemistry sets. Everything that happens within us is a chemical reaction, and chemical reactions in order to facilitate a chemical reaction, you need a certain, like a catalyst, or in biochemistry, as a cofactor, if you like, which tend to be minerals and vitamins. So the minerals and vitamins are really important. And of course, but we need the macronutrients, the protein and the fat. We've discussed that protein provides the building blocks of growth. So eggs and sperm are made of protein, but eggs and sperm are casings for strands of DNA. And DNA requires certain nutrients in order to be healthy and to function properly and to look good and etc. So actually the micronutrients, the nutrient content of our food and supplements, but food always first, is really, really important.
Brilliant. So let's look at the egg and the egg health as well.
So this is just a basic overview, if you like. Obviously, there's a lot more than that, but just gives a rough idea of maybe some of the things. So vitamin D, super important for fertility, both male and female fertility. And I am surprised that there are so many IVF clinics out there that don't test vitamin D, or they only test the female vitamin D. But actually, vitamin D is really important. There are vitamin D receptors in every reproductive sort of cell, both male and female, and also in the uterus, so very important for implantation as well. So vitamin D, super important. And it's sunshine or supplement vitamin D. It's hard to get vitamin D through food. There are little bits in some foods, but it's not really a way of getting, I don't tend to think of food for vitamin D. And the problem is with the sun is that, well, in the winter, we're not getting any. And in the summer, we need to go out and wear factor 20, 30, 40, 50, because we don't want to get cancer, we don't want to get wrinkles, which is absolutely important. But it's blocking vitamin D production in the skin, and we are becoming a vitamin D deficient world. And so it's very important. Well, in the modern world, we're all plastered with SPFs, so it's really, really important, this vitamin D. Folate, well, we all know, most people are aware that and most doctors and clinics will tell you that you need to take folic acid. So folic acid is the synthetic form of folate. Folate is the natural active form that is available through food and is much easier to absorb. And there is also a reasonably significant percentage of the population that has a sort of genetic variant whereby their bodies actually can't break down folic acid very well, and folate becomes really important. So I always talk about folate. So folate's super important, just as important for the man. Actually, I think we'll do that in the male slide anyway, but people don't realize that. Omega-3, really important. It's difficult to get through the diet, particularly as when we're leading up to pregnancy. And in pregnancy, we are told that we can only eat 2 portions of oily fish a week because of the toxins in the waters, which isn't enough to optimize your vitamin D intake, your omega-3 intake. And of course, if we're vegetarian or vegan, it's very difficult to get omega-3 from the diet. You can get small amounts, but in things like chia seeds and flax seeds and things, but actually the active ingredients are harder to get at in those sources. So omega-3, it may delay ovarian aging. It's important for the cell membrane, and obviously the sperm has to be able to get into the cell membrane. We know that omega-3 can improve DNA structure in sperm, so we have to assume it does it in the egg as well. Antioxidants, which I will be talking about a little bit later on, are extremely important for both egg and sperm quality. And I will also be talking about coenzyme Q10 for cell health, mitochondrial health, which is very important because actually the mitochondrial health is the health of the mitochondrion is female led. And we talk about inositol as well, which a lot of people associate that with having PCOS, and it is very helpful for balancing hormones, for balancing the menstrual cycle, for insulin sensitivity. But it's found in the follicular fluid, and it's very important also for egg maturation. So actually, as a structure, if you like, it's a sort of sugar. In fact, it can be really helpful for both male and female fertility. In fact, also good for sperm.
Great, thank you. And someone's just asked here what the ideal vitamin D level by blood test for men and women should be.
So I don't know where in the world you are, but I'm only saying this because in the UK we measure it in nmoles per liter, nanomoles per liter. In Europe, it's often measured at ng. I should really know what it stands for, but it doesn't really matter. Ng per mil, okay? So very different. The way to achieve it, if it's ng per mil, you times it by 2.5 to get the nmoles per liter, because I'm going to talk about the nmoles per liter because we're in the UK. So if it's ng per mil, you times that by 2.5. And from an nmol per liter, the studies show that if both of you have a vitamin D level of over 75, you have a higher chance of IVF success. Personally, I prefer to see it probably between 100 and 130, 140, something like that. But over 75, but for me, 75 is your very bottom, and you never really want to be on the bottom. You want to be higher up than the bottom.
Okay, great, thank you. And then we've got a couple of questions here just on particular nutrients, which we'll look at some of the supplements later, but I think these probably make sense to look at now.
Yeah.
Someone has asked what the recommended dose for inositol and ubiquinol would be.
So inositol, the doses that are studied with fertility, but it is linked to, I must be honest with you, that the studies with fertility tend to be done with women with PCOS, but the dose is 4 grams a day, 4 grams of myo-inositol, and actually inositol and folate together. And actually, yeah, actually, I think the study's done with 500 micrograms of folate. In our particular product, we've got 200 micrograms. So, but you would always pair it with a multivitamin that's got 400 micrograms. So you end up having 600 micrograms of folate, which is really nice. The recommended dose in this country, by the way, is 400 micrograms, which can be a little conservative. Some people need more. So that would be, yeah. So myo-inositol is actually pretty safe. It's been studied in pregnancy. It may reduce the risk of gestational diabetes. If I see women with a risk of gestational diabetes or who have gestational diabetes, I will often put them on myo-inositol because it is safe as long as you don't have super amounts. So that's myo-inositol with ubiquinol. So ubiquinol is the active form of the traditional coenzyme Q10. We will talk about that a bit later on. I mean, it depends on what you're doing. As a general rule, the ubiquinol is 100 milligrams twice a day, although I might increase it during an IVF cycle, but I think we're going to talk about that a bit later. So I would, if that's okay, because I know we've got a slide later on, we might discuss the optimal amounts a little bit later on.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just on myo-inositol here, someone tried it for a period at the end of last year and early this year, had a blood test for something else, and the thyroid levels were off. They stopped taking it and it went back to normal. Is that something
that's really strange because actually, funnily enough, it can improve thyroid function. But the thing is that one size never fits all in life, and so you can look at all these studies and go, well, we found that this is good for this, and it can improve thyroid sensitivity. etc. But you know, it doesn't suit everybody. Now, I don't know if this lady had PCOS or whatever, you know, but you know, trying it, if it doesn't work for you, my answer is always do not take it. You know, this is things like ubiquinol. I saw somebody who was so desperate to have ubiquinol because she'd read all about it. It just didn't, it did literally just didn't, you know, agree with her at all. And she felt wired, she felt sick. And but she persevered. And in the end, we said, just, you've got to stop this. And she felt much better when she was off it. It's unusual, but it can happen. So obviously, yes, that's an interesting one. Without knowing any history, I wouldn't even begin to be able to answer that question. But if something doesn't agree with you, don't have it. Just because it might be okay for the masses, you know, we are all biochemically unique.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So we'll just look then at the male side, sperm health.
So obviously, so eggs, as I mentioned, eggs and sperm are casings for strands of DNA. So DNA is DNA. So essentially, the same nutrients are important actually for sperm and egg health. There's a lot more study done on sperm health because, of course, that's currently there is no test for you know egg health, not in humans. Obviously, they do studies and things like mice and stuff. We know antioxidants improve it. We know all these nutrients that we just discussed can improve the you know the DNA health. There is so sperm obviously needs to look a certain way, it needs to act a certain way, i.e. it's got to swim in a straight line, not round and round in circles. It's got to be able to swim at all. In fact, it's got to have a certain shaped head, otherwise it won't be able to penetrate the egg. So for instance, seminal fluid is very, very rich in zinc. So potentially a man might need a bit more zinc than a woman for that. You know, there is also there is a seminal microbiome as well, and so certain probiotics can support the motility of the sperm and reduce inflammation. We'll also be looking at the vaginal microbiome probiotics as well. So microbiomes become very important, but essentially the same nutrients are as important for sperm. And folate, as I said, is just as important for the man as for the woman. If ever I see anybody, I would always say, if you are trying for a baby, both of you should be taking a multivitamin with folate, not just the female. And male folate deficiency and male vitamin D deficiency are potentially linked with miscarriage, amongst other things. So it is really important, I think, if you're both going for this, and however beautiful the sperm looks on paper, if you like, or in a test, what a test will tell you is what it looks like. It won't give you what the inside is, what the quality is. So it is important to really focus on that as well.
Okay, brilliant. So yes, the key nutrients for reproductive health, as we've just gone over just now.
Okay, yeah, so we've got the folate, which requires B12 and B6 to function properly, and also B2. Most of the B vitamins work in connection with each other, so it's always better to take a supplement with a load of B vitamins than just one B vitamin on its own. Vitamin D we've discussed, zinc we've discussed, is important for the women as well, but potentially the males might need more from a fertility perspective. Selenium is a very important antioxidant. Iodine, I mean, for egg quality particularly, after the thyroid, the ovaries have the highest concentration of iodine. So iodine is a really important nutrient. And if you are vegetarian or particularly if you're vegan, it's very hard to get iodine from the diet. Seaweed is a great way of doing it, but really important. So you know, again, this is where a multivitamin comes in, and you can support your you know your fertility. Magnesium we are going to discuss a little bit later on actually, and calcium. A lot of it's quite easy to get enough calcium from the diet. Magnesium very quickly used up when we're stressed, and something that I use a lot. I think a lot of us are low magnesium. Omega-3, as I mentioned before as well, something that is not always, it can be got from the diet, but you do have to eat quite a lot of oily fish, and that's not always recommended because of our sort of polluted waters.
Okay, thank you. And you tend to ideally look at kind of 3-month plan, don't you, for
In an ideal world, but often, you know, I see people who are going, so I've been told I'm going to start IVF in 6 weeks. It's not enough, is it? Well, the start of IVF is not the end of IVF. I mean, I would always be looking at egg and sperm collection as your date you're looking at. So if you start in 6 weeks, you may not even get to egg and sperm collection for another 4 weeks. That's nearly 3 months. That's 2.5 months. It's good enough for me. You know, if ideally, I mean, it's never too late. I mean, if you are starting IVF tomorrow, you can always tidy up your act. You can add extra protein in. You know, there are things you can do. Improving egg and sperm quality in 2 weeks, you know, maybe not, but you can actually improve the way your body functions. You know, there's never too late. But in an ideal world, you know, 3 months. And sometimes, you know, I mean, obviously as long as you can, but sometimes too long is too stressful. And again, it's, you know, people have got to live a life here. It's, you know, you can't be, I wouldn't recommend anybody as a saint, actually. I never recommend that. I do not think that that is viable. I've seen too many people who it actually doesn't make their IVF work. And when they relax a bit, their IVF can work. So easier said than done, but being too strict is actually not the way to go. But things like reducing or removing or reducing bad foods. We can all have treats, but you know, look at your diets over a week rather than a day. Have your treats, but don't have them on a daily basis. You know, if you have that can of Coke, don't have it every day. You know, if you're having a sort of, you know, there are things you can do. Increase your nutrient-rich foods. So I tend to say make sure you've got protein and colour every time you eat, okay? Protein we've already discussed. The colour will give you the antioxidants. If you have that with each meal, you know, that the 7 a day or the 5 a day actually that we are recommended in the UK really isn't enough of fruit and veg. We need more. And you can do easy things to top up nutrients. You know, having a handful of nuts, you know, whole foods, swapping refined carbs for whole grains, it's not so hard. Adding extra virgin olive oil, which is fantastic for you, you know, but using sort of reducing your processed foods where you can, following this Mediterranean style diet, which, as I say, is anti-inflammatory, it's colourful, it can be used in the ethics, as I say, with any cuisine of the world. You know, one doesn't have to eat Mediterranean food, but it's using the sort of, you know, the pulses, the colours, the nuts, the seeds, the good oils, the good fats, you know, the proteins. So those, but do we have treats? Of course, you know, chocolate, for instance, if people like chocolate, actually is a fabulous source of magnesium. Obviously, the darker the better, but it's when you have it in the day. Don't have a donut at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, if you're hungry, you know, have something with protein. You know, I don't know, oatcakes with nut butter, or you know, hummus and carrot sticks, or something, or an egg, or something with protein, and have your chocolate or something after dinner. When you've had a protein-rich meal, you won't spike. And try and make it better quality rather than really rubbish, you know, that kind of thing. So little things to help, but sometimes we all need a bit of rubbish. And do you know what? There's nothing wrong with that, to be honest. It really, it is what it is, and it doesn't matter. Stress is a big one. Stress is a big one, and a lot of people, IVF is very stressful, and actually worrying about your stress adds to your stress. So if it's a lot of people stress about being stressed. I think, you know, we have our jobs, we have our families, we have things that are stressful. You know, they have to go on around you in order to manage your stress. First thing, balance your blood sugar levels. That's one of the best things you can do to support your adrenals, which are stress glands. So having a protein-rich breakfast, having whole foods, having lots of antioxidants, lots of magnesium-rich foods, particularly, you know, do sort of. There are certain nutrients, and say I'm going to talk about magnesium, which is my big one for stress. But what the most quickly used up nutrients when you're stressed are magnesium, vitamin C, and B vitamins, particularly B5, but essentially B vitamins. So if you're supplementing with things that can help, but by including them in foods as well, really helpful. And then some people like meditation, some people like yoga, some people do mindfulness, some people watch a funny film. Do what works for you. There's always something you can do. Go and have a bath. Or, we're all different, but anything that you can do for yourself, little tiny things will help more than you think. And reducing inflammation, we'll talk about inflammation. Dietary wise, it's everything that we've just discussed, actually. But trying to manage your stress will reduce it. We'll look at exercise as well, because there are things that can increase inflammation. But certainly, from a dietary perspective, it's a starting point. And the most pro-inflammatory foods are ultra processed foods. So poor processed foods, nutrient poor foods, high saturated fat foods, and lots of deep fried stuff. Artificial sweeteners, really bad for inflammation, I have to say. Sugar, nobody realizes sugar is one of the most pro-inflammatory things you can eat as well. And to some people, you know, who are sensitive, gluten might be pro-inflammatory to one person, not to the next. Same with dairy. So it's you know, it's individual, some of it. But it's looking at things that we know might be linked with inflammation. And bloating, by the way, is inflammation.
Okay, interesting. So antioxidants, the role of antioxidants in fertility, and inflammation as well.
Yeah, so antioxidants, which these are antioxidant nutrients, vitamin C, vitamin E, zinc, selenium, yeah, so vitamin E's. Oh, vitamin C is not there. Okay, there are several of them have antioxidant potential. The easiest way of looking at of antioxidants from a food perspective is color, brightly colored fruit and veg. I can't stress it enough. And I would normally say try and have something green and leafy every single day. In fact, one of the reasons that the Mediterranean diet is linked with higher pregnancy rates is that there are higher folate levels in the bloodstream, and folate tends to be found particularly in dark green leafy veg. Also, things like pulses, beans, lentils, and chickpeas. Those are great if you can stomach them. Excuse the pun. Actually, that is great from a folate perspective. But I would tend to say something dark green and leafy on a daily basis. Something orange on a daily basis. That's your vitamin A. Now, obviously, we get a lot of queries with vitamin A because we are told that we can't have vitamin A in pregnancy if you're trying to get pregnant. Correct in that high doses of retinol vitamin A in a supplement form are not recommended in pregnancy because they can damage the fetus. And vitamin A is stored in the liver, hence why people are told not to eat liver. You can have a bit of liver in pregnancy, but the message has to be put out there. But beta carotene is a vegetarian precursor to vitamin A. It will convert to vitamin A as and when the body needs it. When the stores are full, it will stop conversion. You don't overdose on it. It is perfectly safe. And vitamin A is super important for fetal development during pregnancy, particularly the immune system and visual, the ocular health. But it's important for us as well. It's anti-inflammatory. It's really important. So in our supplements, we'll talk later on, we do use beta carotene, and you need to have vitamin A. So I tend to say something green and leafy every day, something orange, and then rainbow colors. If you could do it daily, great. If you can't, do it every couple of days. But get those colors in. I cannot stress how important they are.
Thank you. And just quickly, someone's asked here for frozen embryo transfer prep.
Yeah.
How different would this be from everything mentioned so far? And is there anything to sort of think about when we go forward?
The main difference is that with the frozen embryo transfer, the sort of harder job has been done for you, or you've done it, or if it's a donor egg, it's been done for you. If it's your embryo, you've done the hard work, you've had it all collected. So your protein requirements are not as high. You can relax on the protein. Doesn't mean no protein. It still means you need that protein to keep your blood sugar levels stable. You need the protein to build up your endometrial health. You need protein anyway when you're pregnant for fetal development, and your protein requirements go up during pregnancy. So protein remains important, but you don't need to supercharge it. You don't necessarily need the protein powders unless you're really struggling, I have to say. But all these other things, omega-3, anti-inflammatory, is good for uterine blood flow. Vitamin E is really important to support implantation. Vitamin D, really important. There are vitamin D receptors in the uterus. It may support implantation. Magnesium, really important. It's good for blood flow. So we will talk about magnesium in a bit, but magnesium from a sort of an implantation perspective, it may support implantation. In fact, magnesium deficiency is potentially linked with miscarriage. Magnesium requirements go up in pregnancy. It's great for blood flow. It's anti-inflammatory. From an egg quality perspective, it can help with DNA synthesis. So it's also important for hormone balance. And it can help increase progesterone production, which is slightly more irrelevant in IVF because you are put on progesterone. But yeah, it's a really important nutrient. So the base, I would say that actually the preparation for frozen transfer is pretty much the same. The main difference is that you don't need so much protein, nor do you need so much energy. When we talk about the ubiquinol, you won't need so much energy, obviously, because ubiquinol actually, it can help with endometrial health. Potentially, it may help with implantation, but you don't need it to support egg quality or energy.
Okay, thank you. And talking of,
Oh.
ubiquinol for male and fertility.
Yeah, so essentially, we all produce CoQ. So CoQ10 is created, it's part of the energy production process right in the heart of the nucleus of a cell, right in the mitochondria. But it's apparently our own production of CoQ10 peaks in our mid-20s, which is extremely depressing. So as we get older, our own production is slower. As we get into our 40s, even less so. So probably all of us later on should be using CoQ10. It comes in two forms. Its traditional form of ubiquinone, which is an oxidized form which requires converting. Okay, and then ubiquinol, body ready, already converted, so it hits the ground running. As we get older, I would always recommend somebody uses ubiquinol. So late 30s, early 40s, your body will probably use it. Younger, you can get away with a ubiquinone. You would need more ubiquinone to ubiquinol. So it's what it does, it supports mitochondrial health, it reduces cellular damage, and it's an energy provider. And the egg is the largest single cell in the female body. It needs a lot of energy. So that's just, when you're ovulating normally, when you're going through IVF and potentially ovulating with 20 eggs, your energy requirements are sky high. So for somebody trying to conceive, I may not recommend coenzyme Q10, ubiquinol, and if they're under 35. But if they're going through IVF, even if they're 25, I'd be putting them on it because it's the energy that's required. It's so important. Great for sperm as well. Of course, it's been studied with sperm. It improves it's been found to improve every aspect of sperm health, count, motility, morphology, and even the DNA. And again, it tends to be studied in the ubiquinone form. So the dose for sperm, 200 milligrams, they studied with 400, better with 400 than 200. You wouldn't need so much ubiquinol because it's already converted. So that's generally the rule. When going through IVF, a lot of clinics will recommend that women take 600 milligrams of coenzyme Q10. That tends to be a dose that has been studied. With ubiquinol, you will probably need less. So with the Zita West one, as an example, which is ubiquinol, it's been found that the optimal dose was 200 milligrams in 2 divided doses because the body can only absorb so much at a time, if you like. I generally would recommend maybe an additional one, 300 milligrams, potentially 4, but just probably 3 when going through IVF, because it will just give you a little bit more energy. And I would tend to say probably from maybe 3 to 4 weeks before egg collection, really just to build up.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I think
Oh, yeah, sorry, I've sort of
no, it's fine. I hadn't gone through. I think we've covered the male and female side there, haven't we?
Yeah, well, yes, that just basically gives you a little bit more of the fertilization rates and the effects. I mean, it's a really, really useful addition, I think. As I say, both for the quality of, but also for the energy. So that is those are the 2 reasons it's thought to improve IVF outcome when women take it. It's one is to support the mitochondrial aging and the health, but the other one is the energy. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's something that with IVF is definitely something that's worth taking.
Great. And then this is the Zita West ubiquinol product here.
Yeah, so which is in the active form, and as I say, the recommended dose is 1 twice daily. And I think we've got this slide here because we've also brought 120 capsule pot out, which obviously is economically better. It's quite a useful one, and because also if men have it, then people can share it. But it's definitely something that's worth it. There is no known toxicity with coenzyme Q10 with ubiquinol, but because there is not enough study in early pregnancy, I would always say, stop it at embryo transfer. I would take it up to transfer. Some people stop it after egg collection. I would generally say take it up to transfer. I see tons of women who are taking it when they're trying to conceive naturally and they get pregnant naturally. And then you just stop it. As I said, there is no known toxicity. And actually, it has been studied later on in pregnancy to potentially reduce the risk of preeclampsia. But I tend to say stop it just because nobody can give you a guarantee of the safety in early pregnancy. That is the reason, not because it's dangerous. And I'm only saying that because I get a lot of questions on it.
Okay, thank you. We have had a few questions which ask about the Zita West ubiquinol compared to other brands. Obviously, it's difficult for us to talk about other brands because we don't know the product as well, things like that. But what would you say is the difference here
Well, the Kanaka ubiquinol is a very high. I mean, it's. I think the Kanaka is. I should probably know more. It's a Japanese sort of derived. It's from Japan, I think, originally, and it is in. I mean, obviously there are other brands that do Kanaka ubiquinol, but it is thought to be one of the most highly absorbable ones. I mean, as I say, for me, it's very much maybe age related. So certainly late 30s, certainly early 40s, definitely go for ubiquinol over ubiquinone. I think you would be doing yourself a favor. You know, in your 20s, early 30s, it would be okay to take the ubiquinone, but take it at a higher dose as well. I mean, you may not even need it for egg quality there, but for IVF. But you need, the reason you need more when it needs converting is whenever you convert something, you lose bits along the way. You use up certain nutrients in the conversion rate, but also you lose bits along the way so that you never get the full potency. Does that make sense? So that is why you need less of the ubiquinol. But all the Zeta West products are used as sort of active ingredients, and so therefore theoretically they are more better absorbed. So yes, quite right, Sophie. I mean, we can't give you any particular reason with other brands, and I think it's very much a question of personal taste.
Thank you. And just another quick question on CoQ10. Is absorption better in tablet or gel form?
I would probably say gel form actually. And something else that I need to say with it with is that the Zeta West ubiquinol is vegetarian friendly. It's not vegan. I think it's got some beeswax in it, but it's vegetarian friendly. A lot of the ubiquinols out there have got gelatin in the capsules, so that makes it difficult for some people to take if you're following a halal diet or a kosher diet, stuff like that. So that is another benefit of it. Again, I mean, I do see a lot of ubiquinol out there that are in a capsule form or a tablet form, and there's always scientific research to back it up. So I'm not a scientist, and so it's difficult for me to say. I tend to say because it's fat soluble, it's fat soluble things are often better absorbed in a little fat. It's like vitamin D is better absorbed in a little, either in a spray or drops or in a little gel, liquid filled capsule than maybe in a tablet. It
Okay,
doesn't mean they're not absorbable, but you may not get as enhanced an absorption, I think. But that's all I can say. I'm not 100% sure.
brilliant. Thank you. And then we've touched on this earlier about mindset. Someone did also ask a question earlier, which I do think we covered, just about can stress at work or home and big emotions impact implantation and how to manage it?
The answer is maybe. Of course it can. I mean, when you are stressed, you do use up well, you use up a lot of nutrients, I have to say, but particularly magnesium. And I mean, look, people do get, believe me, I've seen people who get pregnant, during IVF when they are super stressed and they're thinking this is never going to work. And it does. So, I mean, of course, and people get pregnant through stressful, situations. But anything we can do to try and reduce it is good. So the mind-body connection is extremely potent. So anything that works for you, do it, because you can't get, and don't, sometimes let the stress around you go. I mean, it's there. If work stress is stressful, don't worry too much about it. I think don't add stress on top of stress. But what I would say is support it to make sure that whatever supplements you're taking, you've got some good B vitamins there. You've got magnesium. B vitamins best taken in the morning, magnesium best taken in the evening. Try and get enough sleep. A lot of people find when they're stressed, they don't sleep enough. And actually, a lot of people find that by taking magnesium, it helps them sleep. Now, if that's going to help you sleep, you're going to sleep better. That can help, it's all a knock-on effect. Gentle exercise. So high intensity exercise is not recommended for either male or female, actually, in the lead up to IVF. It can increase, well, for male, it can certainly increase heat, but it can increase pro-inflammatory reactions. It's a stress in itself, actually. So high intensity exercise, but some exercise is good. It gets everything moving, and a lot of people. I mean, it's one of the areas in my clinics that we really have to negotiate because a lot of people exercise to reduce their stress. So, it's a fine line that but when you're going through IVF, your ovaries are at the gym, so let them just do their thing and, don't start jumping around and do so. I think you need to try and just, ease it off for a few weeks if you can, but doing some gentle exercise, but that can be very good from a stress management perspective. And as I say, anything that works, some people find that acupuncture is very relaxing, or reflexology, or whatever works for you. If there's anything that you can find that does help, then it is worth. Hypnotherapy can be great as well, and and hypnotherapists can often give you really good tools to sort of support stress responses.
Yeah, yeah. Funnily enough, someone had just asked if acupuncture or reflexology help prior
Yeah,
to like,
so acupuncture, I mean, I've worked with acupuncture for years. I think that, there's a lot of study done actually with acupuncture and fertility, particularly with IVF and IVF outcomes. So, great for, I mean, I'm not an acupuncturist, so they'll probably kill me for not being able to say how it works, but fantastic for, reducing inflammation, improving blood flow, hormone balance. I mean, you name it. I mean, acupuncture's been around for so long, but it can be really helpful. Not everybody likes acupuncture because of the needle. So, maybe reflexology is better for that. Some people hate having their feet touched. Everybody's different. So, but anything that can help, I think, there's a lot of benefit in these things if you like them.
yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you. So just looking at female supplements for IVF preparation in general, we have just while you're talking through, someone did ask earlier about is it best to take supplements separate or all together? So obviously this is our kind of ultimate
Yeah, I mean, that is huge, that one.
yeah.
I know some people find that overwhelming, and some people find that taking too many things at once is not great for their system. What can happen is if you do take a lot of supplements, if you're not used to taking it, or if you're a bit sensitive, it may there may be a time of adjustment, and that can affect cycle as well. And people find that very stressful. It's, as I say, everybody's different. So this is our sort of all singing, all dancing, a sort of our ultimate IVF pack, which has got sort of the multivitamin in that I recommended, omega-3, the ubiquinol, the inositol. We've got something called NAC, which is a potent antioxidant, great for eggs and sperm actually, and has actually been studied with reducing recurrent miscarriage risk. For that particular one, there's also VitaFem Boost, which is antioxidant support to support egg quality. So where there are two capsules, or, per product, if you like, I would try and have them in divided doses. So for instance, the VitaFem is 2 a day, one with breakfast, one with lunch, or one with breakfast, one with dinner, something like that. With ubiquinol, the same thing, not taking it all at once because your body, it's easier to break down, always, unless otherwise recommended, and I am about to do that, take things with food because when you eat, you produce digestive enzymes which break the food down. This will help break the capsule down, which will help you absorb it, stop you feeling sick. Some people feel sick if they take supplements on an empty stomach. The NAC, however, potentially, and we also have something called alpha lipoic acid, which is another amino acid. They're both potent antioxidants. Those are potentially best taken away from food. But on the whole, I know people who take everything all at once feel completely fine, by the way, but ideally, it would be best to try and take them in divided doses if you can. It just helps your body break them down and you're not swallowing 15 things at once. And equally as well, if people find it really overwhelming, you can mix and match a bit. You don't have to take everything every day if that is too much. You know what I mean? Particularly if you've been taking everything for 2, 3 months or whatever, and nutrients are built up in your system. A multivitamin is designed to be taken on a daily basis. Omega-3 I would probably take on a daily basis, but frankly, if you forgot a day here and there, it wouldn't matter. When you've been building up some nutrients, if you want to mix and match, they will still be in your system. They're not going to leave your system in a day. So, there are ways of doing this whereby it's not quite so overwhelming.
And I think sometimes we find people panic, don't they, if they realize they've run out and they're not
Yeah.
going to get it in time, that missing a day or two, or they forget a day.
Absolutely doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And even things like, oh, you've got to take folate every day. If you forget your folate on Monday and you don't take it till Thursday, you're not suddenly going to be folate deficient in 3 days. It doesn't work like that. So I mean, supplements can be very helpful. With IVF, I actually think they has a definite role because if you're producing a lot of eggs, yes, you need the protein, but actually each egg is a casing for DNA, and we know DNA requires all these nutrients. So your micronutrient requirements are also increased, and it is very difficult to get much more of that via diet because you don't possibly physically eat it all. So the supplements will support. They should always do what they say on the tin and supplement a good diet. But in IVF, I think they definitely have a role for sure. Supplements have a role. And some suit some people better than others. As I say, we've put all this together. You know, yes, not everybody suits everything. That is a true.
Mhm. And someone has just asked here the best supplements for someone with small fibroids and suspected adenomyosis.
So adenomyosis is basically, it's a form of endometriosis, but the sort of the plaques, it's like the tissue grows somewhere different, sort of intrauterine, if you like, rather than on top of the ovaries. So it's the same sort of condition as endometriosis. So the same rules would apply. I would say, be thoughtful about being potentially dairy free and gluten free, maybe. The fibroids are sort of, they're both estrogen dominant, they're sort of estrogen led conditions, if you like. So supporting liver function is really important. Eating a high fiber diet, keeping red meat to a minimum. Magnesium is really important. So the supplements for adenomyosis would be, for instance, vitamin D, folate, multivitamin with folate, omega-3, definitely for both of them, both adenomyosis and fibroids, anti-inflammatory agents are really helpful. So omega-3 is really helpful as an anti-inflammatory agent. And sort of antioxidants are anti-inflammatory, vitamin D, magnesium, they're all anti-inflammatory. There may very much be a link with impaired microbiomes, and I know we're going to talk about the probiotics in a minute, but probiotics, be it gut ones, but also for the vaginal microbiome, is probably something that I would always consider, because that can really help support implantation as well. Again, without having a history or without actually talking to somebody, this is a very rough overview. It's hard to be able to give something very accurate, but certainly inflammation and looking at healthy excretion, so making sure that you are evacuating your bowels regularly, because constipation will mean that that can really increase your estrogen levels and your toxins and all that kind of thing. So liver support, high fiber, vitamin D, often vitamin D deficiency is linked with fibroids actually, and also endometriosis and therefore adenomyosis. So that's something that might be looked at. Yeah. Sorry, I can't give you anything a bit more accurate than that, but it's difficult with that without having a history.
Someone's just asked, with that, is there a different dosage that you'd need for omega-3, or would it be what's recommended already?
Well, I would tend to, well, it's very much dependent on the diet and what's going on. From our omega-3, so this one in this picture is our ultra omega. We've got two of them. The ultra omega is highly absorbable one. It's bound with phospholipids, which make up sort of cell membrane, so it can enter the cell membrane very quickly. So if somebody is not used to taking omega-3, they've got a pro-inflammatory condition and they've got IVF fairly shortly, I'd say go for that one, because it will get into your bloodstream. Take a month or two of that, absolutely. Then you could move on to a more sort of general omega-3. So we've got something called Vital DHA, which is suitable throughout pregnancy. There are plenty of other good ones out there that are also mixtures of EPA and DHA. But like with anything, things take time to build up in your system. So it's the dosages depend on individuals, on their diets, whether they're taking, you've got to be a little bit careful if you're taking blood thinners at all. You can't have very high doses of omega-3. That there are various, but if you're not used to taking, and some people find they can't tolerate them. I mean, that's really rare, but some people don't. So with anything, I would always build up. Always build up your supplements. Try them slowly. Start with half a dose of, or start with only two. If you've got a pack, start with 2 or 3 products, and build it up over a week. Don't take them all at once, because it can be a bit too much.
Okay, brilliant. And then this is our male equivalent of the other all singing and dancing.
So omega-3 just as important for the man, multivitamin with folate, etc., just important for the man. Vitamin D. We've got the Menseed, which is a probiotic to support the seminal microbiome, particularly good for the DNA, but also motility. We know that the vitamin boost is an antioxidant support. So this all singing, all dancing would definitely be if there are known problems with sperm. Just for somebody who's got no apparent issues, I would say just, always a multivitamin and omega-3 as your basic, and probably vitamin D depending on the time of year, particularly in winter. Those would be your basics. If we know that there are problems with motility, maybe morphology, or count, particularly, and the Vita C Pro is brilliant for that. So that contains amino acids that are particularly linked with supporting count, motility, etc. Um, if there are known, if somebody has had a sperm DNA fragmentation test, for instance, and the DNA frag is high, then the antioxidants are really important. So having an antioxidant support, the ubiquinol, it's, as I say, this is not necessary for everybody. The ultimate packs may not be appropriate for everybody, but they are all singing, all dancing when we know that there are issues. And the great thing about sperm is you can see the benefits, and you can't see the benefits in women really. You can see the benefits maybe with an improved IVF outcome, but with sperm. And it's really interesting. You see, people have been told that they have to go for ICSI, which is when they inject the sperm into the eggs, and they've really put the effort in on the day. Their sperm's so great, you don't have to use ICSI, and it really makes a difference. It's fantastic, actually.
That's brilliant. And then this is just a bit of a drill down on a couple of ingredients we've mentioned already.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about magnesium because so many people, I think, can be lacking in magnesium, and th things that can be linked with magnesium, sort of, when I say deficiency, maybe a lower levels of magnesium, anything from sort of, just having PMS, or getting, sore boobs before your period, or period pain, or headaches, constipation, anxiety, sleep problems, any muscle cramps or twitchy eyes. All of those can be linked with lower levels of magnesium. And I think magnesium we live in this world where everything is sort of 19 to the dozen, and we're all stressed, and stress is more. And the original stresses are, being borne down upon by a wild animal, or going to war, or things are very acute. Now we have underlying everyday stresses where we've got deadlines, and we've got this, and we've got somebody shouting at us, and all of these things, and a car won't start, or whatever. These underlying stresses that don't seem to go away, and they will still be using up nutrients. And so magnesium is also really helpful if your luteal phase is short. It may help support progesterone production and stuff, and it may support implantation. It's anti-inflammatory, and as I say, it is often lacking in people's diets, and it can be really, really helpful. And am a fan of having like a sort of a supplement first aid kit, like you've got your first aid kit with your aspirin and your plasters and stuff. Magnesium, really helpful. You don't have to be taking it every day, but if you find that it helps you sleep, take it for a good month or two to build up and then you can just take it as and when, 3 times a week, or if you're feeling stressed or during a period, and it reduces period pain, or that kind of thing if you've got a headache. But it's really, really helpful. And a lot of multivitamins don't have very much magnesium, because a multivitamin is designed to be safe to be taken on a daily basis. So it's not mega dosed. Otherwise, it stops being a multivitamin, because not everybody needs everything. So it's a really useful thing to have. And I think, as I say, more with the stress and stuff, and lots of people really find that it helps. I mean, I have to say, sleep so much better when I have magnesium, which I've run out of, which I'm really annoyed at. But so if I could take that out of the screen, I would. If you notice any benefit, then your body probably needs it. But don't forget that nutrients build up in your system, and then the aim is to maintain the levels.
Okay, brilliant. And a couple of people have asked what type of magnesium is in our tablets.
So it's a marine magnesium, which is derived from sort of mineral salts from the Irish Sea. So it's a sort of mineral rich, the minerals will help. It's highly absorbable because it's a whole product, if you like. So it's a whole magnesium, if you like, and it's really highly absorbable. Um, there are magnesium complexes out there. There are sort of magnesium, sort of glycinate is a nice one, particularly if you're anxious. Different things suit different people, really. But look at what you're buying. Don't just buy any bog standard. A lot of sort of the bog standard magnesiums tend to be oxide, and magnesium oxide is not. It can irritate the gut, and so if you're taking it in high doses, basically, it's not the most absorbable. So you want to have something that's gentle. Magnesium citrate is particularly good if you've got constipation, for instance. It can help with bowel movement and stuff. So, but ours is a marine magnesium, and it's very gentle. I mean, I try out pretty much all of our supplements. I really like this one. I have to say, I've found it really nice.
Okay, thank you. And then choline as well.
Ah, yes. So choline. Choline is a sort of um it's coming a little bit more to the fore, and people, I think a lot of people have realized that, or have heard that maybe choline is important in pregnancy. So choline is almost sort of on a par with folate for the neural pathway developments. So in pregnancy, really important for fetal development. It can help support the placenta and all sorts of things. But prior to conception, it's one of the key components of phospholipids, which are important for, which I mentioned, which are important for cell membrane structure and function. And so really important for that. So they can help with both sperm and egg structure, but also the actual quality. So it's important for both male and female fertility. It may help, their studies have shown that it may, alongside omega-3, increase follicle count, which is a really nice one. And if you're vegan, absolutely throw choline at yourself, because there's not, it's the best food sources include sort of fish and meat and things. Eggs are one of your best food sources. You can get it in vegan, in things like beans, particularly like beans and lentils and things. But if you're vegetarian or vegan, well, vegetarian, if you're eating a lot of eggs, it's fine. I mean, eggs are a great source of choline. That's why it's such a great, which I mentioned a bit right at the beginning, didn't I? Sort of eggs are great fertility and pregnancy food. But it's one of those nutrients that is coming to the fore. There's more study being done on it, and its role not just in pregnancy and breastfeeding, actually, because it also helps with the baby's brain development even after birth, if you're breastfeeding. But certainly, it improves fetal brain development, and it may reduce, brain issues and stuff. I mean, really interesting stuff out there. But it's the preconceptual one as well that I think is really interesting. So yeah, just something that it is just useful to have. Again, I would put it in my nutritional first aid kit. So if you've got a day when you're having a 3-egg omelette, you probably don't need choline. You're getting plenty of choline, that fantastic, lovely. If you're not eating anything like that, or you're having a vegan day or something, take some choline. Do you see what I mean? You can mix and match, but it's a nice one to have.
Okay. And then
Very
probiotics.
anti-inflammatory as well.
Oh, okay, even better. Yes, the microbiome. We've had a few
Yeah,
questions.
so the microbiome is again, it's a bit of a hidden issue. This is not so much to do with egg quality, but it's more implantation. And we know that the gut microbiome, so 70% of our immune system really is in the gut. So it's really important not only for our immune system, but for absorption of nutrients, for production of certain nutrients and stuff. So really important for reducing inflammation. We're back to the inflammation as well. But the vaginal microbiome also, if either the gut and the vaginal microbiome talk to each other, and the vaginal microbiome is really important to support implantation and reduce miscarriage risk. And there are the organisms that proliferate in the vaginal microbiome are slightly different to the ones you might find in a sort of gut probiotic. So the lactobacillus species are the predominant ones. Crispatus, which is mentioned here, is probably the most prolific one, but there are other ones like Rhamnosus and Plantarum and Gasseri. There are other ones as well. But the folate, well, we talked about the other ones, but really important to support. As I say, it can reduce miscarriage risk and increase the chances of implantation. And certainly, I've seen some really interesting studies with the reduction of inflammation, particularly when linked with things like endometriosis and stuff like that, adenomyosis, the same sort of thing. PCOS is also a pro-inflammatory condition, and an impaired microbiome. There are links with impaired microbiomes in these conditions. And so by supporting the microbiome, and again, the aim is to build up your army, if you like. So you take it, I mean, maybe for 2 months or 3 months or something, and then you can go, well, maybe I'll just keep my hand in and take it for 3 times a week, or I'll have a break for a month or whatever. It's, with a lot of things, you don't have to take everything forever by any stretch. In fact, I would recommend you probably don't. But it's something that I often recommend, and I often say to pregnant women, if you've been taking it, just take it throughout the pregnancy. The vaginal microbiome remains important anyway. Start it prior, definitely start it as early as you can, if you can, and if you ever have a history of UTIs or BV or positive HPV from smears or thrush or any irritations, some of which are treated with antibiotics, which automatically are going to decimate your microbiome, but these irritations, these infections can can actually happen, or they are allowed to proliferate, if you like, because the soldiers aren't there. They've gone on holiday, and therefore you want to put them back in again, which are the organisms. And NAC, which I mentioned a little bit earlier on, is also not only a potent antioxidant to support egg quality, etc., but it can also support the vaginal microbiome. It works really well, which I think is potentially another reason that maybe it can reduce the risk of miscarriage. So they work really nicely together. And yeah, so and actually with the stuff that's found in FemSieve, really interesting studies whereby, so there are 34 capsules per pot, so which is about 5 weeks worth. After 5 weeks, there's something like a study shows 70 something, I think, percent improvement, but after 10 weeks, it's 2 pots worth, over 90%. So 2 pots worth, and then you can maybe reduce it to 3 times a day. You know, it's quite a nice thing just to have. Or a lot of women also do find that they suffer with thrush in pregnancy, so this can help with that as well. But it's just a hidden area. You can know that you've got issues, in which case you really need it looked at. But that would be something that you'd need to probably be checked out, and or you could, it's just a question of sort of belt and braces. But it's one of those hidden areas when everybody looks, you look at egg quality, you look at this, you look at everything. What's not happening? This might be an area that is not so obvious.
Yeah. And someone's just asked, does Gardnerella affect implantation?
Well, if you've got Gardnerella, it would indicate probably that you haven't got enough of the Lactobacillus species, okay? And so that is a more a potentially pathogenic organism. And so by improving the vaginal microbiome, by getting your soldiers back in again, they can just say, get out, So it's I mean, look, like with everything, there's probably millions and billions of women around who've got all these infections and are popping out kids left, right, and centre. Of course, there, I mean, it's, we can pick anybody off the street and they've all got things wrong with them. And how come they've got 4 children? But the point is, if there is something that is an issue, it's worth dealing with. And
Okay.
taking a probiotic is pretty simple, really, but it doesn't work overnight.
Yes, and
Yes.
so you can take it throughout IVF. So again,
Absolutely. I would highly recommend you do. I would highly recommend you do, actually. Don't stop, and take it after transfer as well. Yeah, don't stop. Absolutely. It's a probiotic. It's one a day. It's very, it's a good one.
okay, and sorry, someone also has had a microbiome test and they had high lactobacillus already. So should they still take a probiotic?
You don't have to. You can if you want. It's not going to hurt, but good for you, frankly. If you don't need to, then that's fine. Then that's a good thing. Would I'd say one less thing
Yeah.
to consider. And the Mensieve is a really interesting one. So this is this is a 21-day course. So there are 21 capsules in a pot, and it's designed to be taken for 3 weeks. Then maybe have a break. Then you could do another for a week or so. Then have another 3 weeks. The results are reasonably long lasting, but certainly the main sort of, I think, findings of motility particularly have improved quite considerably, and I think the DNA has improved as well. So it's just, again, it's not something that needs to be taken all the time, but frankly, every little helps. And so just maybe taking 3 weeks and then having a break for a week or so, and then doing another 3 weeks, that might just be enough.
Okay, brilliant. And we covered this slightly earlier as well, but this is
Yeah.
embryo transfer.
So for embryo transfer, obviously blood flow. Blood flow is important for IVF as well, because the better the blood flow to the ovaries, the better the nutrient flow. Better the blood flow to the uterus, the better the nutrient flow. So again, omega-3, as I talked about with blood flow, magnesium, really good for blood flow. Iron, of course, and that's the thing which we haven't really touched on. But if people know that they are low in iron or a bit anemic or something, then a multivitamin like Vitafem, for instance, it's got a small amount of iron, but it would not, it's not mega dose, otherwise it wouldn't be a multivitamin anymore. It can be important to have extra iron, because that's really important for blood flow, things like acupuncture and stuff. But also, beetroot juice, pomegranate juice, nettle tea, there are certain things that you can take food wise that can support blood flow. Basically the main difference, as I say, for embryo transfer is that you don't need to be supercharging your protein. You need enough, but you don't need silly amounts of protein anymore. You do need to look at inflammation. You do need to look at the vaginal microbiome. You do need a high antioxidant. Folate, very important for implantation. Vitamin D, vitamin E. selenium, beta carotene. So, a good nutrient rich diet will remain the same, and, focusing on blood flow. And this is where I think acupuncture can be extremely useful as well. Drinking enough liquid. People forget drink, both for egg quality, but also for, everything has to, the liquid is really important. So with the 2 week wait, I would say, as I mentioned a bit earlier on, if you're taking coenzyme Q10 or ubiquinol, then probably you don't need to take that. As I say, you use that specifically really in the lead up to embryo transfer. Anything else? I mean, like for instance, if you're taking our products, the VitaFem Boost, I would tend to say you can stop it after transfer. Again, there's nothing, it's done its job, if you like, but it contains pine bark extract, which is a potent antioxidant. There's not enough study. That's the only reason we tend to say stop the ubiquinol and the VitaFem Boost after at embryo transfer. Anything else you can just continue if you want. With lifestyle, again, you're not going to start, climbing a mountain or, training for a triathlon or anything like that. Look after yourself, eat well, drink enough, obviously no caffeine, no alcohol, and I wouldn't go on an oyster fest. You want to be eating as if you are pregnant, basically. So watching things like raw fish, raw meat, unpasteurized cheeses. I mean, the foods that are not recommended in pregnancy, you don't want to be eating in the 2 week wait. So those are really the main things, and it is a stressful time. So it's just doing what you can to live a life without being too stressed.
Yeah, it's a horrible,
It's
horrible
horrible. Yeah.
time. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you. I think we've had lots of questions asked throughout, but someone had asked how about the one-to-one sessions that you do. So if you scan the QR code here, you can get a free product recommendation call with both yourself, Isabelle, and Rebecca, our specialist nutritionists. There's also lots of information on the website, and feel free to email if you have any questions as well. A lot of the time it's you as well, isn't it? The other side of that email to help answer specifics.
Yeah, sure.
They just missed
Oh,
what needs to be stopped after egg collection.
okay. So, well, after I would probably eat them out if you want to stop them after egg collection, fine, but you can take them up until transfer because the nutrients will still help support the endometrium stuff. It's the ubiquinol and the VitaFem Boost.
Brilliant.
But
Thank
if
you.
you forget, it really doesn't matter. I've had people panicking saying, "Oh my God, have I ruined it?" You haven't ruined anything. But also, frankly, you just, if you want to have a break, you can also stop the inositol as well if you want to. I mean, sometimes you just want to take a step back. You've been doing all of this, plus you're being put on all of this stuff. So, but what I would remain on is omega-3, VitaFem, the NAC if you're on it, and the FemCev, and depending on the time of year, obviously vitamin D. Those are the ones that I would really remain on. But if you can't remember, either ask, but don't panic because nothing in there is fine. It's perfectly fine.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Isabelle. That was brilliant. Feel free, everyone, to sign up as well to our newsletter to be alerted when we have another webinar. Quite often there are Instagram lives and things like that. So there's lots of ways to find out extra information if you head to zitawest.com. And we will see you next time. Oh, we've just popped it in the chat there, how you can email and book a consultation as well. But yes, thank you so much, Isabelle. That was lovely. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you for joining us. And yes, see you very soon.